Welcome to the Restore for Life show, where wetlands thrive and wonders grow. From tiny tadpoles to reeds so tall, we'll dive into the magic that binds it all. Meet Sam Tofts, who will be your host through the story of wetlands, where science, stories, and inspiring insights come together. Let's uncover the importance of these ecosystems.
Hello and welcome back to today's episode of the Restore for Life podcast, the show where we explore the amazing Restore for Life project and get to know the people who are making it happen. I'm your host Sam, and today I'll be joined by Tim Grandjean to discuss citizen science and the power of the people. Tim is an environmental researcher working with the Archipelagos Institute of Marine Conservation based in Greece. Here he focuses on community-driven initiatives and the integration of citizen science and local knowledge into conservation work. Welcome, Tim. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Sam. Thank you.
Yeah, great to have you on the show. So maybe if I missed anything out, could you tell us a bit more about yourself and the work you do?
Yes, I'm Tim. I'm working for Archipelagos, and I'm trying to run several projects like Restore for Life. And my interest and expertise is especially on citizen science, because I think it's really interesting to get citizen science on board for nature conservation. We face huge challenges as a community, and together with citizens, I think we can manage much more than only by scientists.
Fantastic. So how did you get into this field of work? Do you have any kind of core memories of how you got into environmental research?
Yeah, I go back to when I was a very small child. I think I was 2, 3 years old. And we had a huge flood in the Netherlands. And actually, I had to evacuate. I had to get out of my house due to that flood for several weeks. Luckily, we didn't have any damage. But after that, we started with Space for the Rivers, a huge program in the Netherlands to give more space to the rivers. And I saw everything happening from the window in my sleeping room. I saw how they start changing the environment. And maybe that's even more a memory I have than only the evacuation. But it made a lot of huge impressions on me. And I think that's what really fascinated me already as a child. And when I was around 12 years old, I already said, I want to work on rivers, I want to work on hydrology. So I start slowly moving more and more into that direction throughout my studies. And at a certain time, I faced citizen science, and I thought, hey, this is interesting. We know a lot of scientists, but all the other people know even more. And let's combine this knowledge, because then we can actually make a stronger statement towards nature conservation, towards protection, and improving the environmental state.
Okay, so you really grew up with front row seats to water management then?
Yes, it was just like 100, 200 meters from my house. That's where it all happened. And throughout my life, I stayed in that surroundings, and I stayed in contact with the river. So the river is really in my heart, and not only in my brain. And that makes maybe as well that I have a lot of passion for this kind of environment.
Fantastic. So you've mentioned citizen science quite a lot. I think it might be a good way if you just sort of tell us a bit more about what citizen science is and how it can contribute to environmental conservation.
Citizen science is actually that anyone interested in nature conservation or actually studying the environment is contributing to the science. So that can be, for example, a farmer, that can be someone that just owns a shop in a town, but that likes to go into nature, making photos, doing observations, and they share their knowledge with scientists. That's more or less what citizen science is. And we try to incorporate their knowledge, their observations into policy, into management. And that makes citizen science sometimes very interesting, because in terms of bird observation, that's maybe one of the most known science programs we have. Many people in the world observe birds in wetlands, in forests, everywhere, and they share it on all the different apps that exist. But it tells us a lot about the distribution of certain species across the world. And even with the ringing of birds, we know actually how individual birds fly and where they fly to and which areas they are using. So these are, for example, very well-known citizen science programs too.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine there's a lot of bird watchers who have just as much knowledge as some of the scientists researching them.
Definitely, and I think there are many projects that actually rely on the bird watchers, and they don't hire scientists to do actually the observations, because scientists are much more expensive than the bird watchers. They like to do it for free, so why not?
Have you found it's a good tool for getting people out into these kind of environments that they wouldn't usually go into?
That's actually the big challenge we have. There are so many tools around, and that people can use, that it comes sometimes. In Dutch, we say we cannot see anymore the forest because there are so many trees in the forest. That's actually happening here too. There are so many apps, there are so many tools that you don't know actually what to use, and what makes the managers in your area happy. So at Restore for Life, we try to find a solution for that. We really try to come up with a toolbox, and this toolbox has different kind of tools depending on the activity you would like to do. Maybe you want to study the water flow, you want to understand the biodiversity, that require different tools, but you can find in the toolbox which tools are needed to study your wetland. And that makes it perhaps a very interesting project for many citizen science, because all those people, they just can check easily the toolbox, what do I need to use? And I know if I use this tool in this area, the results will be used.
Okay, so you would say the key is trying to make it as easy and accessible as possible.
Yes, and that's most important. And one thing is via apps or via this kind of toolbox we try to develop. Other things are just going out in the field and chatting with the people, or go, for example, to local schools, local communities, have the interactions, share knowledge, local environmental knowledge, that's how we call it. But yeah, we cannot be everywhere in Europe or in the world, so that's why we often see that there are many apps existing. That we just need to give direction. Okay, this is the app you should use. So your data has a value.
Okay, yeah, in the age of there's too much choice with all these apps. So, in what would you say are the kind of biggest challenges that these sort of coastal and wetland ecosystems are kind of facing? And you know,
It's the problems we all facing. Climate change. That's maybe the biggest problem. The temperatures are rising. That is a threat to many animals, maybe as well to certain plants. There are invasive species entering, so species that are not native to that area, they don't belong in that area. There are, for example, very big threats. In the past, and luckily in West Europe, it becomes less. We had a lot of problems from the large industry, that they were discharging a lot of polluted water. It's becoming luckily less and less in Europe, thanks to all the strong frameworks we have. Another thing is, and that's getting in the same direction, is the anthropogenic impact. So we, being present in those areas, we really do harm to the nature. We can see plastic pollution, a very easy one. We have more and more often floods. That's perhaps because the water retention upstream is very bad. And water retention upstream is bad due to things we do, for example, embankments, creating only straight channels, like not a natural flow of a river that is nicely going with curves. Meandering is how we call it. But it's just a straight channel. So we want to get rid of the water as fast as possible. But that's causing somehow as well floods. So many decisions we took in the past, together with climate change we see today, are really facing big challenges and problems for those ecosystems. And if we can mitigate certain, climate change is a larger thing we should mitigate, but on a smaller scale, we can do already the embankments, for example, so creating a little bit more river for the space for the river. On the other hand, we can remove the channels and give the river the natural flow back, creating a kind of nice forest next to the rivers. That's good biodiversity. So there are different kind of things we can do without the need to target at the moment the climate change at a local scale. We still need to target climate change, but that's something more on a worldwide / nationwide scale.
So through citizen science, it allows local people to make local change and, contribute to improving these wetlands.
Exactly. And I think you and me are happy if we see something happening in our surroundings, something we observe, we see a change. That makes us happy. That gives us energy to continue with this kind of efforts. While the larger things, we still understand it's important, but it's much more difficult for us as an individual to take action. And that's what we really do with citizen science. We really target on a local scale action. So what you're observing in your surroundings, in your backyard almost. Like me living next to the river, what I see happening there, that I see the river is getting the natural flow, the biodiversity is increasing. That gives it a powerful meaning to me, and it gives me as well a kind of happiness because I could contribute to it.
Okay, that's amazing. So where would you say Restore for Life contributes to these challenges and solutions that you mentioned?
With Restore for Life, we create a toolbox for citizen science. So that's to get you out in the field and to collect meaningful data. But then that data is there. And then you think, okay, how can it become meaningful? So in the project, we try to create as well tools that your data is getting to the stakeholders, like the managers of those locations, the people that need to do the restoration activity. So they can actually see there is a need for restoration. And if the restoration is happening, they can see it is getting better. The environmental state is changing. Biodiversity is increasing. There are less floods, for example. So we really try to connect, on one hand, citizen science, you and me, together with the stakeholders like the local community, the national government, NGOs that are responsible for the restoration activities.
Okay, it's really like a bottom to top.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what we try. And on the other hand, there's as well this top-down approach because the local stakeholders can ask as well the citizens to help them collect data. So it's always a two-way interaction. The most important is that both groups think that they are important and that they feel the value of the activities.
Okay. So what do you think needs to be in place to deliver good results of a citizen science scheme, such as in Restore for Life?
Well, we really need to create environmental awareness first, because if you don't understand the importance of the area around you, it becomes very challenging to get you out. So often you see that we need to do a lot of environmental education in the communities, together with NGOs, together with the universities, to show to the citizens the biodiversity, the connectivity of the rivers. It's all very important as well for you, so that they start understanding why that area is so important for them. And then they are often happy to start contributing. If not, then you end up with only few people that contribute, and still their data can be very valuable. But sometimes it's not only about the quality, but you need as well quantity of data. So in my opinion, the first thing that we should do and start with in terms of citizen science is always environmental education. And so we do in Restore for Life. Environmental education is another important target.
Okay. So, and what would you, I know there's some skeptics out there about citizen science, people who maybe doubt its effectiveness in science, maybe think it should be left to the scientists. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's always this question, can we trust citizen science? This question I get, well, almost daily. I think we can trust citizen science. Well, I know we can trust citizen science because we do more tests to compare, for example, citizen science with data we collect as scientists. And often citizen science is at the same quality or even better. And why it's even better? Because citizens have way more time to collect actually data or to look at data than we have as scientists. Where we come in as scientists is interpreting the data. That requires much more the skills we learn in universities. But collecting the data, that can be done by almost everyone. And how we can change the skepticism is by really chatting about it, showing good examples, being open, being transparent about the data, and having very good frameworks how data is collected. So if we see, okay, this person is collecting at this location at this time data, all the things we should do as a scientist too, then it becomes valuable. So if we are transparent, it is good. But if the data is just pairs and completely random, then it can become a little bit more challenge to use it. But luckily, we can target that, and we can often get very meaningful and interesting data out of citizen science.
And this is what we're doing at Restore for Life then? Yes,
that's the toolbox that we try to create, and as well the interactions we would like to have with the local communities, together with the environmental education, for example. And then there is the other toolboxes for stakeholders to really show, okay, this is how you can use and interpret this kind of data and come to good, well, how to say it? Well, then you can come to good restoration activities.
Okay, so if let's say we get people involved, and we change starts happening, people start listening. What would you say, the biggest difference would be between, let's say, a unhealthy wetland and a restored wetland?
Well, I live close to a river. We had floods. I had to leave my house. Well, after that, they start with restoring the biodiversity. They start by creating again more space for the rivers. They start doing a lot of interventions, and after that, I saw a very high biodiversity. I didn't face any problems anymore with flood, so my safety increased. So at the end, it's not only about what's happening in that small area where the river is, it's often having an impact to the wider area. Because if your safety increase, you're much more happy to live somewhere and invest in an area as a business or as just an house owner. So we really wanted not only for the small scale, while we have to increase biodiversity, but we want to have it as well for the larger scale. And at some places it is increasing as well the economy, because a nice nature reserve or nice nature that really attracts people. So there is tourism. That's, for example, one of the tools that starts appearing after restoration activities.
So you're seeing change at multiple levels, I guess. This is
definitely. It's not at one scale that the impact is. It is sometimes a huge cost at the beginning to start with, but often the benefits are much more than the cost, because the benefits we will see in the next years, decades, and the costs are just something we have to do often once.
So what would you say a world with entirely restored wetlands kind of looks like?
I think lovely. I think we have much less problems with climate change because there's a lot of carbon storage happening in the wetlands. We have a very nice biodiversity. There are no problems for many species. Birds can fly everywhere. And we humans can have a really good and nice interaction in those surroundings. It's giving us a lot of rest. It's a nice place to go to. There's as well nice food coming from, for example, fish. At some other places, there are medicines coming from those areas. So it's bringing us back a little bit back to the past. And I think it's going to be lovely to have nice wetlands in our surroundings.
And if we were to fail to take action, how would you foresee the future in the next few decades?
I think it's gonna be very, very, very bad. I don't like it actually to think about this negative scenario. But what we see in the recent few years is more and more floods. So I think it's becoming more and more a problem that areas are really flooding. The biodiversity will even more decline. Perhaps invasive species will take over most of the areas. So we really need to make sure that wetlands become resilient. So they have the power to cope with stress, extreme heat waves, for example, but still come back to the natural state. And if we keep going like how we did it in 10, 20 years ago with wetlands, then it's getting definitely in the bad direction.
You'd say we're definitely at a crossroads at the moment.
How do you mean?
Crossroads of, now is if we can make change happen, then we can restore wetlands. to, I guess, their former glory. And if nothing is done, it could, we could see further consequences of it.
Yes, definitely. And I think we are all more and more aware about the consequences, given the news articles in the last few years, with the floods, with the extreme heat waves, invasive species at certain countries. So we are aware about the problem. So it's really this crossroad. We need to take action. If not, it's getting completely in the opposite direction.
So would you say you're hopeful about the future? Do you have any reasons for it?
I think I'm hopeful because luckily at the European Union scale, we have a lot of regulation. So we really try to move in the right direction. But now it's really, we have to take action. We as citizens, we as local communities, the local governments, we have to take action. We have to say, okay, let's restore our surroundings, because that helps us to start the ball rolling. We can wait for very large scale national or international wide initiatives to make a change, but it's much more easy to just start small and things become slowly big. So I'm hopeful because many people start realizing the need, and small scale is much easier than large scale.
That's great to hear. Do you have a call to action for the people listening?
Well, I think just go out to your surroundings and start observing how beautiful the area is. And if you do it every now and then you're going to see changes. You're going to see changes of seasons. If you're going to do it a few years and you're going to see, okay, what does a heat wave mean to my area? How often are the floods? You're going to observe, for example, where the water flows easy, where not. So it's just go out and explore the nature. It's amazing.
That's great to hear. Well, Tim, thanks very much for the conversation. It's been a pleasure to have you. But with all our listeners, we like to ask if you have any kind of book recommendation or any kind of media that people could check out, something that inspired your work.
I have an amazing book. It's on my coffee table. It's Before They Pass Away from Jimmy Nelson. And it's a kind of photo book with a lot of cultures from across the world that face the problems due to anthropogenic stress and climate change. And you really see cultures that facing extinction. And I think it's fascinating just to look at the photos and think, okay, what we are doing has a huge impact on all those communities. And this is in the world, it's at a local scale happening too. And it realizes me every day more and more why we need to take action.
Great. So we'll be putting a link for that in the show notes if anyone wants to check that out. But yeah, once again, Tim, thanks so much for joining us. Great to hear your insight into this.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sam, and a big thanks to our listeners tuning in to the Restore for Life podcast. If what you've been listening to is of interest to you and you'd like to learn more about Restore for Life, you should check out our website and our social media, which can be found in the description of this podcast. Until next time.